Hey everyone, it's Allison. Welcome to my YouTube channel and another video. Today we're going to be looking at one of my favorite stenciling techniques, and we're also going to be looking at the new Splendor release from Simon Says Stamp. So I actually have two cards to share with you today showing this technique, and it all has to do with using different colors on your stencils and using some masks. So let's look at the first stencil set we're going to be using. This is the Mosaic Tulips. This is part of the new Splendor release from Simon Says Stamp. And here's a picture of the back of the package that shows you what you'll get if you just use one color per stencil. Now I have created a mask. So like I said, I want to color these flowers different colors. And so I've just created this little mask that's going to let me do that. I have my 6x6 grip mat, which I absolutely love using for stenciling, especially with these 6x6 stencils. And because it's a 6x6 stencil, it just lines right up onto the mat. Now I am coming in with my first color. This is Shabby Shutters, and I am using Distress Oxides for this card. They just blend so beautifully. And by the way, the panel that I am stenciling onto, it's kind of a creamy colored cardstock, and it is slightly smaller than an A2 size piece of paper. Now I'm coming in with my second color, and this is Spun Sugar, and you'll see I have another stencil. So I'm sorry, a mask. I have a different mask for each color. Now this third color is Kitsch Flamingo, so I'm using the same mask as I did for the Spun Sugar because they're both pink colors. I didn't really need to worry. And now I'm coming in with Saltwater Taffy. I really wanted to warm that Kitsch Flamingo up a little bit, so I decided to come in afterwards with some Saltwater Taffy. And again, I can use that same pink mask to do that. So here's the reveal of the first stencil. Now the second stencil is easy to line up. Again, because it's 6x6, I just line it up on the grip mat, and then I'll know that it's lined up with the first stencil. And you can also eyeball it with your panel. It's pretty easy to line up these stencils. All right, for the third stencil, I'm going to be using paste. So I have washi tape on the back of this panel, and now I'm going to take the stencil and I'm going to line it up. And again, it's easy to eyeball. And now I can press it down on that tape, and it's going to hold it to the stencil. It's going to hold my paper to the stencil. Now when I use pastes, sometimes I just like to use a piece of paper underneath my stencils just to contain the mess. I'm using Slippery When Wet Lunar Paste. This is from Simon Hurley, and you'll see in my bottle I had some press and seal. And I'm getting out my tools. That's my stencil pal, and I have my little spatula. And now I mentioned I had press and seal in the bottle. That's how I keep my paste. It just helps to keep the paste fresh and not dry out. And here I am just globbing on a bunch of paste. Now, usually I'm really bad about putting on enough paste. This time I made sure to put plenty of paste on here. And I can just spread it around. This stuff spreads so easily. It's very creamy and really easy to spread. And now I can just put all the excess back into my bottle and put the press and seal back in there and seal it all up. And now we'll do the reveal. Now, sometimes you'll get paste on the side of your panel, so I usually just take my thumb and just rub that excess off, and there we go. Look at that shiny goodness. This color is so pretty. It's very yellowy gold. Now here's what I was talking about. I just throw all my stuff on this piece of paper and I carry it up to my laundry room sink, and I can rinse it all off. All right, let's make this card. These are new 3D foam strips. This is part of the new release, and they're pretty thick. And again, they're foam strips, so they're thin. And I have this sentiment die that I have already cut out. This is the birthday wishes die, and I cut it in gold cardstock. Now you'll see I made the shadow layer from Vellum, and I want to pop this up on my card panel. So I am going to cut these small pieces of these foam strips and put them on the back of these letters. Now here I'm just testing it out, making sure that you can't see the foam strips and that I like the dimension that I'm getting. And it works perfectly. So I'm going to continue putting little bits of foam strips on the back, and now you'll see all those pieces that I put on there. And that's what it's going to look like. I'll make sure to take all the release tape off, and I'll attach that off camera. Now, finishing this card, the green leaves that you see are from the Grand Corner Leaves set. And you'll see some vellum leaves. That's from the Aurora Blooms die set. And I added some lunar paste to the edges of those vellum leaves. All right, let's go to the second card. This is the Layered Sunflowers stencil set from Simon. This is not a new set. I think this probably came out last year, but it is gorgeous. And it's new to me. I just bought it recently. So I love that these are bigger stencils. You can do a 5x7 or slimline cards with these stencils. So they're really versatile. Now, again, I want to do different colors with these stencils, but you'll see that this is going to be a little tricky to do unless you make masks. And so some of these elements are really close together. So here are the die sets that I typically use when I'm creating these little masks. These are Hero Arts Infinity dies, and they come in just about every shape you can imagine. I, again, use the circles and the ovals for the most part. And so for this particular stencil, I used this little oval. And so that's how I'm going to isolate these parts of the flowers. And so these little masks that I'm creating, it's all about isolating the part that you want to color. Now for this stencil, again, this is a little bit tricky. I made a circle so that I can color the leaf part of this stencil. And so for whatever reason, a couple of these rows are differently spaced when it comes to this little tiny oval, which is the center of each flower. Like, so you'll see I made a little oval mask to mask off those, but the leaves are spaced a little bit differently, and you'll see what I'm talking about later. Now this third stencil, you could probably get away with not using a mask, but any shape mask will work for that. All right, now I have my big grip mat out from Waffle Flower. This is the 8.5 by 8.5 grip mat. And my paper panel, it's just a white piece of paper. It's A2 sized. And I'm lining my stencil up so that the design is nice and symmetrical on my card panel. Because it's A2 size, this is going to be the front of my card. I don't want to have to cut it down. Now the purple piece of tape that you see at the bottom, that's just to cover the whatever flowers are there on that bottom row, because I do not want to color those, and I'm sure that I forget, so that's why I covered them with purple tape. And I am using my Waffle Flower brushes. These are the new Shader Plus brushes, and I think this one is the 3+ size, and then you'll see me also using the 2+. And I'm coming in with yellow first. And now I'm coming in with orange. And again, using these masks just makes it so easy and so fast. Now, the one thing that I do recommend is obviously come up with your color scheme ahead of time so you know, you can just go quicker when you know what color you want where. So here's my turquoise colors, and there's the royal blue color. And I'm using my Positively saturated ink cubes. You'll see those off to the side. I will list all the colors on my blog, and you'll see a link to my blog below. All right, now I'm going to show you kind of an interesting way to line up your second stencil. So I am stacking my two stencils. The one I'm going to be using next is on the bottom, and the one I already used is on the top. And I'm lining it up so I can see my panel through those stencils. So I can line up the colors that I've already stenciled with the pattern, with the stencil on top, if that makes sense. Now I can push down, and what's sticking to my grip mat now is the second stencil. I hope that made sense. Now I'm just going to make a minor adjustment here, but that was just kind of an easy way to line up that second stencil. You can also just eyeball it. I mean, most layering stencil sets are really easy to line up. But when you have a piece of paper in the middle of a grip mat and you don't necessarily have a good way of lining up your stencils, that was just, I don't know, wanted to show you that idea if you're not comfortable eyeballing it. So here you see me coming in with all my colors. These are just darker versions of the first set of colors. And every once in a while when I start a new color, I'll kind of peek. I'll pull the stencil back and just make sure I'm happy with how much ink I'm putting down. If I wasn't happy with it, maybe then I would go darker. And oh my gosh, these royal blue colors are so gorgeous. So here's the reveal after the second stencil. And now here's the third stencil, and I just eyeballed this. This was easy to line up. And I'm coming in with my lightest colors for the little centers for these flowers. And so here's the orange. Now here I've come in with some Salvage Patina Distress ink. I really just needed to pull in some lighter colors to fill in where I didn't have them in my saturated ink line. And this was an all to new color to come in with a really light blue. All right, so now I am coming in with another mask, and this is for that leaf. Now I was talking before about how one row of these leaves is spaced differently from the little tops of the flowers. So you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. And by the way, you can see I'm using a bigger brush. Now I do advise that you probably make a bigger mask if you're going to use a large brush like this. I did okay, but it would have been easier if the area around the circle was bigger. Now here's where I was talking about where this leaf is closer to the flowers below it. And so it was hard to get the bottom of the leaf colored with my stencil or my mask. So I'm just going to come in with another one of my Shader Plus brushes. This is the Shader 0 Plus brush from Waffle Flower, and I don't even need to mask it. I can just come in and fill in the little bottoms of those leaves that I wasn't able to get with my mask. So here we are. I am just in love with this. Now I did get a little bit of green on the top of one of those flowers. So I'm just going to come in with an eraser, and you'll never know it was there. So again, if I had a bigger mask before or used a smaller brush for my green ink, that probably wouldn't have happened. Now I did come back in again with a slightly darker blue for the tops of those blue flowers. All right, let's finish this card. I am using the new Birthday Basics stamp set. This is from CZ Design and Simon Says Stamp. And when I saw this, it immediately reminded me of this larger set. This is the big old birthday set, and you'll see that like the birthday wishes is just a slightly smaller version of what was in this bigger set. And like the let's celebrate is just a slightly smaller and different version of the let's celebrate in the big set. And there's a big sentiment that says so glad you were born in the original set, and now it's a sub-sentiment in the smaller set. So here is my card. I white heat embossed my sentiments onto blue cardstock and just trimmed them down. And I added little dots to the flowers with just some markers. And I love this card. I hope you love it too. Here's another card that I made with the Mosaic Tulips stencil. That was the stencil from the beginning of the video, and I'll have details about this card on my blog, but you'll see I used the new Beautiful Dove die. That's part of the new Splendor release. And for this, I used a different paste. I used Hero Art's, I think it's called White Pearl paste, and it ties into that shimmery dove. And again, I'll have details about this card on my blog. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I really appreciate having you here. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.